welcome to FPL Gents. This is our preseason game week 1 draft video. And with me today I have Sam. Hello Sam, how are you? Just walk us through your team and your plans for the first couple of game weeks, and what's your strategy starting the season?
So the first thing I would say is that I am 100% against planning for an early wildcard. I know a lot of this kind of divides people. I never try and plan that way because I just think the ideal thing to do is just try and get off to the best start you can. If it turns out that there's a lot of bandwagon players that you just didn't foresee going off, I would never rule it out, but I would always just plan as if I was playing the season at any other point, set my team up for the next few weeks, see how it goes. So I'll preface with that. At the moment, I'm on the 4-4-2 formation, which is proving quite popular, I think, around a lot of the FPL teams that I've seen floating around. There seems to be a lot of confidence in the defence right now. So although I've started with Nick Pope in goal just to try and save a bit of money and not take up one of my Liverpool slots with Alisson, who's the only premium I'd probably consider. I should say on Nick Pope, that's something that is liable to tweak. I was doing this on the assumption that Tom Heaton was on his way to Villa, which was floated a couple of weeks ago and hasn't resurfaced since. So if I don't know who's going to be in that Burnley number 1 spot, they definitely won't be in my number 1 spot come the start of the season. But I'm hoping to look for a 4.5. So it could be that I look at Matt Ryan, who also has reasonable fixtures. But as you can see, the next part of my defence is extremely premium. I've gone for the 2 Liverpool defenders. I've picked, controversially, because Andy Robertson might be one of my favourite players in the entire game, but I didn't want to pick both the 7.0 defenders. And I thought, given Alexander-Arnold's points per game last season, I think at the same price, with his being on free kicks gives him ever so slightly an edge for me over Robertson. Otherwise, I think it's almost impossible to separate them. He's maybe a little bit more in the firing line for rotation, just because Liverpool have stronger players that can play right back than left. But I think early on, he's fresh. You know, there's been no World Cup. He hasn't played since the Nations League back in June in terms of a competitive match. So I'm happy with Alexander-Arnold. As mentioned, I've picked Van Dijk because I didn't want to pick another 7 million. He only scored 5 points less than Robertson last season. So, in our first week drafts, we know how important that 0.5 million could be. He's 100% guaranteed to play every single minute if he's fit, which he always seems to be as well. So, at the moment, I'm pretty set with him too. Luca Dean is my 3rd expensive defender at 6.0. Most crosses in the league last season. I think it was something like 3 goals and 4 or 5 assists as well, maybe more than that in the end. It seemed like he was racking them up every week at one point. Great on bonus as well. Everton's fixtures to start with are really, really nice, which is another reason that I find it hard to ignore him. I know a few people have spoken about Coleman being cheaper, but for me, Coleman's getting a bit older. He's been prone to injuries in the last couple of years. Dean seems like the reliable pick. Early on in the season, again, I don't see him missing out on minutes, so he's kind of a no-brainer for me. I think he's going to be on my team, whatever happens. My last starting defender is probably the most contentious. At the moment, it's Zinchenko. There's questions about if he is in the same level as the other kind of premium Man City defenders when you look at Walker and Laporte. Obviously, he's a bit cheaper. We do know that he wasn't first choice at the start of last season with Benjamin Mendy, obviously coming in and tearing things up. Mendy's out until September, I believe. So at the moment, I feel okay with Zinchenko there. Obviously, Delph being sold. Laporte can play left back, but I don't see why he would, because then you'd play a weaker centre back at centre back. So I think Pep's best defence involves Zinchenko at the moment. He played most of the run-in last season where they were faultless and were keeping clean sheets for fun. He can get forward and get assists as well. So at the moment, I think he's providing good value there at 5.5 in the City defence. Midfield, the obvious. I think Salah's great value. 12.5 million. He's cheaper than he was last season, and he was the top scorer last season. With a lot of people still feeling like he didn't reach his potential. So to have him at less price than he started last season, that seems like a no-brainer to me. Great fixtures. It's nice to have that home Norwich as an easy captain decision to start it off with, hopefully a bang. I'm not worried about him going semi-deep into the African Cup Nations. He's back in training for pre-season, and I'm hoping we'll get a chance to see him, even if it's just for half an hour in the Community Shield this weekend, which would be a good little barometer to see those two teams lining up. Next to him, from the other side of Merseyside, Gylfi Sigurdsson. Went under the radar a bit last season, 4th top scoring midfielder. 8.0, I think, is a safe price for him. I don't think he's going so far under the radar at the moment. People seem to be getting him quite a lot, but as I mentioned with Dean, fixtures are great. They've probably got just about the best fixtures of any team in the first 6 or 7 weeks. He seems like a safe pick that will tick over. I can't see him missing out on minutes. One thing I should have mentioned, that pretty much my top priority when making a game one team is minutes, and especially when you're having to trim a lot of fat around the edges, and you'll see later on that I don't have a lot of money in my bench, so just trying to make sure my first 11's nailed on is crucial, and I think Sigurdsson is that. The next one is probably the player I'm most on the fence about, given his price and given the season he had last season. It's Kevin De Bruyne. He's obviously quality. He's one of the best players in the league. We know that, but he had a very injury-prone season last season, and it's not the only time we've seen injuries disrupt him. If he plays how he can, and Rodri or Fernandinho is able to anchor that centre midfield and let him create and go forward and supply Aguero, he'll get loads of points, and he'll do it consistently too. But it remains to be seen whether in the long term it'll be better just getting Sterling, who's more of an explosive captaincy option, because I'm without Aguero, so I would say I don't have an explosive Man City asset, and we know that they are one of the most explosive teams in the league. So at the moment, I'm sitting there happy with him, but it could change. My last starting spot is one I hate looking at the moment. So at the moment, I'm sitting here with my 6 million midfielder being Daniel James. It's not really something I expect that I'm going to start game week 1 with, but it's kind of a slot I guess I'm sort of holding because I like the structure of my team, and I think hopefully in the next 10 days I'll get more information about somebody, whether it's Conor Hourihane or whether it's Roberto Pereira from Watford, or even just information such that I know I really want to make the move up to Jose Perez and find the money elsewhere. So that 6 million slot is a bit awkward at the moment. One thing I could do with it is I could upgrade it to a 6.5 million if I downgrade Josh King, who's my current cheap forward. I do like having a way into Bournemouth's attack, but King burnt me last year, and he is very much a poor man's Callum Wilson, and he's the second best striker on that team. Something I've toyed with in the last couple of days, but I'll need to do more research into, is possibly downgrading him to Che Adams, who Southampton signed from Birmingham for, I think, in a region of about £10 million. He's already scored 3 goals in pre-season. Their other strikers never really fired last year. Danny Ings, Shane Long, Charlie Austin, they can perform in fits and starts, but none of them seem to be able to stay fit. Che Adams is young, he's hungry, it's his first crack at the Premier League, so he could be my way in. Their fixtures aren't as good as Bournemouth to start off with, but they're not terrible. They've got a couple of nice games in there, so there's a chance that I take him over King, and then that would allow me to move James to somebody like Yuri Tielemans or Jose Perez, who's definitely got a lot more minutes under them. My last striker, my premium striker, which is where the high end of where my team differentiates from a few, is that I've got Aubameyang starting. I really think this is going to be a great season for him. He suffered a lot last season, and there was a lot of rotation in Emery's team, and I know there's a risk he might do that again, but one of the things Aubameyang was rotated for was this illness quite often, and it was all quite mysterious. And then Emery came out and said that he had this sinus problem, and he had an operation on it, which then cost him another couple of weeks. But after that, he seemed to be back in the team for the last few weeks of the season. So I'm hoping that will lessen his rotation a bit. He shared the golden boot with Salah and Mane, but he played far less minutes. I think 300 or 400 less minutes than those. So in terms of a goal per game ratio, he was the best striker in the league at that level. They've got reasonable fixtures to start. They start away at Newcastle and then play him to Burnley. Liverpool in game week 3 is obviously tricky, but I'm hoping those first 2 he could really start fresh and go out and just score a lot of goals. I prefer him over Kane. I think just Kane's lack of real first team football in the last 6 months, and also their game week 2 fixture at Man City sort of concerns me. So Aubameyang's probably, if I don't end up caving for Sterling, he'll be my sort of supplementary premium that I use to kind of captain when Salah's got the real tough games. Not much to talk about on the bench. Will Norris, 4.0 goalie. Martin Kelly, 4.0 defender. Staj Chowdhury, who I think that's his name. Sorry to him if I've got his first name wrong. I actually really rate him as a footballer. I watched him for the under-21s, and I actually watched him play for Leicester in a friendly on Tuesday night against my local team, and he was very good. I've rated him for a while now, so it would be nice if he was a 4.5 that could contribute, but he is a 4.5, which is the main reason he's in my team. And Mason Greenwood, who everyone I guess knows about at this point, he's been touted by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to get minutes. For me, the formation I'm intending to play is a 4-4-2, so I'm not expecting to use him. But if he does start, even coming off the bench for 20-30 minutes in a United side that could be explosive this season, then I think he's a no-brainer at 4.5 million. So yeah, that's the motley crew as it stands.
Cool. So you talked about the positive aspects of your team. So and I agree with most of it, of course. So let me just say like counter arguments and things to consider when choosing these players.
Yeah.
So I'll go from the goalie and forward. So yeah, you said it with Pope. He's a risk that we have to monitor in preseason. So not much more to say about that. I think I'm also going for a 4.5 goalkeeper, trying to find the right one. So we'll see how that ends up. But I do think there's value in picking Ederson or Pickford or Lloris or even Fabianski. I think there's you can't go wrong with either of those really. But it would be nice to find a really like cheap beast there. Alexander-Arnold is the first guy on my team. I'm not moving him for anyone, with the points per minute that he had, the defense they have. So I don't have a good counter argument against him. So let's move on to Van Dijk. Van Dijk is so good value, and I agree that it's worth saving the 0.5 versus Robertson. I think it would be nice to have Robertson, but it seems like a luxury I can't afford. And I agree, I would rather go like Van Dijk and Digne versus like Robertson and Coleman, for instance. I don't think it's much between Robertson and Van Dijk, even though, of course, Robertson would be nice. And about Digne, they seem pretty good in defense, Everton, but at the same time, they've lost Kurt Zouma. Probably lost Kurt Zouma to Chelsea, and they've lost Gueye to Paris Saint-Germain. So I'm not too sure about their clean sheet. They might have overperformed a little bit in that department as well. So I'm probably going to stay off Digne, but he's one of my he's very close to get into my squad because obviously he's really good going forward anyways. I like the Zinchenko pick, but I think it's too risky for me, as you said. I'm on you with the thought that I don't want to wildcard early necessarily, and Zinchenko just makes me think. I don't know. I think he will be good value, but it's hard to say for how long. I think Ben Mendy's injury is going pretty well, his recovery. And it's just unclear what Pep thinks, really. But you have a good point that they finished the season strong with Zinchenko. So all logic speaks to Zinchenko being a good asset in the first couple of weeks. Still, though, I think maybe I will play it safer. It's not completely safe with Pep, but midfield-wise, yeah, Salah is just so good. There's not many counter arguments there either, and I think he's worth all of those money. He's so captainable. Sigurdsson, he was in most of my drafts at the beginning, but I've kind of like fallen out of love with him. Reading up on him a little bit, he was not doing that great in the end of last season, and Everton seemed to have like a little bit of difficulty in offense in the preseason. So he's definitely an option for me too, but I think there's more value in Fraser for 7.5. I think there's more explosiveness in a short-term punt on Lucas Moura. I think Bernardo Silva could perform better than he did last season in terms of FPL points. But if you want good fixtures and a guy who's going to tick and not be too explosive, but he's going to get those points eventually, then if you like to have patience, I think Sigurdsson is totally fine. And I like De Bruyne. I have De Bruyne in my team as well, so not much to say about that really. He's a good one. And James, I think he is interesting. I just not sure how he will perform in terms of FPL. I think he's a very interesting prospect, but I'm unsure about his potential attacking returns, so I'm staying off of him, but I think he's interesting. Josh King, as you said, he has burned me before. I'm not going to look at his way until he might pop off, and it will probably be at home. So that's nice that you can probably have that predictability around him. But I think Wilson is just so much better. And as I said, Fraser or Wilson are my two ways into the Bournemouth attack. But I like the price point King is at. You can switch him to Jota, Deulofeu, downgrade him to Che Adams. I think 6.5 is a good guy to have initially. And Aubameyang, lastly, I think he's a good captaincy rotation guy for Salah. If you look at their fixtures, they have like each and every home fixture. So the other guy has an away fixture, then the other guy has a home fixture. So it looks kind of juicy. I like it, but I'm waiting for the Nicolas Pepe deal, and I'm just not sure about the Arsenal assets otherwise. As you said, the rotation risk, Laka seems to be on pens now maybe, because he is probably better at pens. Aubameyang has a weird technique on the pens. It looks like any goalkeeper can save them, but he usually tricks them a little bit. I don't know much about the bench. I have Kelly and Greenwood as well, and I think I would probably move Greenwood up on the bench. And as you said, he is explosive, and Kelly as well, because he probably has some clean sheets in him if he will play. Okay, so let's go to my team then. Hope you're happy with those reviews. So my team, I have the 4.5 goalkeeper dilemma. Right now I'm on Henderson for the foreseeable future. I think he's nailed, but yeah, I think there's like some kind of charm towards like the promoted side with a good defense. I think it's I don't know. I think it's kind of funny to hope for them without really knowing about them. So that's my like main argument. But also I think Ryan, or rather Brighton is kind of trash. So I wouldn't want to have Ryan hoping for save points. But Pope is the dream, or Heaton, if we know who plays. But apparently Hart has had the most time on the pitch by those in the preseason. As we've talked about Alexander-Arnold and Van Dijk, and as you see, I have Walker. I want some kind of way into the defense, and I think Laporte is too expensive for a center back. I'd rather go for Ederson probably and try to find like a cheap beast in defense. I don't know, but Walker seems like a guy who does the job normally. He was kind of low on assists. I think he underperformed. He has because he usually gets like 6 assists a season. So it was a weird season for him. Don't know what happened there, but I think he's good enough to play most of the games. With that said, Laporte is like the nailed-on guy. But yeah, Ederson, I don't want to go over 6.6 million for someone who can't get attacking returns, basically. Anyway, going forward, yeah, so, my plan is to rotate captaincy between Salah and Sterling. That's why they're there. And the rest of the squad suffers a little bit. But I can see like a only Salah strategy. But for me, I want that explosiveness that Sterling brings. It's really nice to have captaincy when he explodes. But the fixtures aren't great for Manchester City first 3, so I might revise that strategy and maybe go for Salah like in the beginning and then downgrade him to Sterling. That's also one thing I consider. Tielemans, I'm not even sure if he's the best 6.5 in Leicester, but he was so good for me last season, so I think I'm going to trust him to do well, and he's a really fun player to watch, and yeah, he can do everything well, I think. And De Bruyne, yeah, he's the best thing I like about De Bruyne is he's like a placeholder for Heung-min Son, who's suspended in the first 2 game weeks. So if De Bruyne doesn't perform, I can just switch him to Son. That seems like a nice plan to have. And yeah, so the 5th mid spot is, I don't have much money left, but I think Den Donker will do a job. Yeah, not much to say. I think it's kind of risky to play it this way, but if you play De Bruyne, and Sterling and Salah, you don't have much cash for else. I could downgrade Jota and just play Wilson actually, and upgrade Den Donker to like a better midfielder or defender, but it's hard to find someone I like. So the attack, we have Jota right now. He's probably not going to stay, but he was very good for me last season. I think his best value of all the attackers, except his schedule is kind of tricky, and he's on Europa League. So there's definitely counter arguments against Jota, but I think he's very explosive. He's a very good player, and I think 6.5 is very flattering. And then we have Wilson. He's actually nailed into my team. He's so good value. He has great points per minutes last season. He would probably have hit 200 if he had stayed fit. So I'm going to try to play him with the nice fixture run that he has. And yeah, I think actually if Den Donker, he's not certain to play, not at all. But so my bench consists of Greenwood, Lundstram, and Kelly. But from those 4, I can't see, I miss everyone out of those. I think Lundstram seems secure for playing time, and Kelly has a decent chance. Greenwood actually has a decent chance starting some games. So I think we can afford to have like a Den Donker or Lundstram playing and hope. Okay, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'll start from the back. I'm not very keen on Henderson. I just look at Sheffield United starting fixtures, and I think that you're waiting a long time for a game where you're like, oh, good, I'm glad they're playing this team. I mean, Bournemouth away game 1 is going to be tough. We know they can score goals. Palace at home is probably good, and then Leicester at home is again tough, and then you've got a 6-game run where you're involving Chelsea, Everton away, Liverpool and Arsenal. So that's my only concern. I think you've got to be prepared to ride it out for the save points, because I think you might be a little bit dry in the hope of clean sheets. But like you say, it's tough sledding back there, because you either go and you spend 6 million on a top keeper, or you have to take the risk with those kinds of players. They could still concede a couple of goals every game, and he could pick up 6 saves and bonus points like we've seen Fabianski do so often. So it could work out. I just wouldn't be looking at him personally. As I mentioned, I think Matt Ryan's who I would look at if I wasn't looking at Burnley. Hopefully under their new manager they'll be better. But yeah, it's a tough choice there. Kyle Walker's an interesting one, because he is one that I was very keen on getting in my team. The second I saw his price launched at 6.0 million, I thought he was good value. As you said, really bizarre how few assists he got last season, because he's always been known for kind of being that right back that will get down the wing, particularly when he was at Spurs, even before at City, and put balls across the box. And it's not, I mean, I watched a fair bit of Man City last season, and it wasn't like he didn't look like he was getting in those positions. From the eye test, he was still up in those areas, he was overlapping, he was putting balls across. So you feel like that's got to turn from him, and if it does, I would be surprised if Laporte drastically outscored him. He might edge him over the season with the odd goal, and we know how good he is on bonus. But I do think Walker's very good value, and if I could justify that little push up to 6 million, I would. The only thing is, like you mentioned when you talked about your midfield, is that City's schedule actually isn't that great, and they became a bit of a different animal at the end of last season and started kind of this grinding out of clean sheets. But they don't tend to start seasons like that, particularly under Guardiola. So I can see a world where I actually don't go with any City defender. But Walker, I do like him at his price. Sterling's, yeah, great. As mentioned, I'd love to have Sterling. If I can wiggle my team around and make it happen, I will. He's a brilliant option to rotate with Salah, because I can't see there ever being a week until they play each other where I'm not going to fancy either of them to score against whoever they're playing. But one of them's going to have a game they like. Tielemans, yeah, I think I know what you mean about he might not be the best 6.5 at Leicester. I was lucky enough to watch him on Tuesday, and he was incredible, and he completely controlled the game, obviously against poor opposition, but he ran the game and he was spraying passes, but he was never really supplying Vardy. He was more supplying the wingers, and then they were the ones putting the balls in. So I wonder if he might just be the kind of pass behind the assist as a rule. But I mean, teams can't. There isn't a way to figure out playing against Jamie Vardy. You can't just sit 5 yards off him, because it'll never work. So play it. He at points he's going to catch people with that ball in behind to Vardy. So he'll still pick up assists. I just think we need to know what's going to happen with Perez, because if Perez is going to play like a second striker, I think it's a no-brainer for me that he would be value over Tielemans. But still, yeah, it's a great price point. There's so many players around there. There's a lot of easy switches you can make. So it's definitely, with their sort of semi-decent starting fixtures, I think it's a low-risk kind of punt to take. I can't get on board starting Dendoncker on a weekly basis. I think he's probably the best of the lot at 4.5. But then, on the flip side of that, I was speaking with someone about this yesterday, and with my kind of Daniel James slot, which, even though it might not hold Daniel James, I have no idea who I want to pick at 6 million. So maybe I am better off picking someone at 4.5 who probably will score not a lot different, and then that's another 1.5 million I can do. If I did that in my team, that would be Josh King up to Callum Wilson, and then maybe Wilson and Dendoncker do outscore James and King, or another 6.0 and King. So I think in isolation it looks terrible, but for what it may allow you to do with your team, it might just be the way we have to go with things. So yeah, I can understand why it's there. Jota, I'm so upset about Jota because I think he's incredible value. When he was, even as shifting to forward, at 6.5, I think is amazing. But it's the starting run, and like you said, the Europa League might have an impact. So have they signed a striker yet? And they were definitely looking at a striker. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, he's definitely got the ability to start as he finished off last season. I do think he is capable of playing for a team better than Wolves. To be honest, he's a really top player. I just can't bring myself to do it because of, as I mentioned previously, like I really set a high price on players that will play the 90 minutes. I can't see him playing. If he starts every game, it'll still be fine. But I definitely think he's getting taken off with 2025 to go while they're in the midst of this Europa League sort of qualifying campaign. Callum Wilson. Just the more I think about Callum Wilson, the more I can't see how I can bring myself to start the season without him. Like you said, his point total for what his price was last season was great, and it feels like he should be at that Vardy price point, and he's not. And with this fixtures being good as well, it's hard to ignore. And he's just so much better than Josh King. I just hate Josh King. I think it's a great pick, and as I said, him and a 4.5 million, maybe, even if that's what you have to do to start your midfield to get him playing, that might be the way to go because he was so consistent at times last year. He's got a good knack of scoring against the weaker teams, and that's someone you want to have in FPL because reliable returns are more important than sporadic returns when you don't know when they're going to come. So I like that as well. Not much to talk about on the bench. I'm intrigued by this Lundstrom at Sheffield United. I hadn't really sort of set much store by what was being mentioned about him, but there was a quote that came out. I think it was from Chris Wilder, from the manager. I didn't really read who it was from, but I guessed it was just from the nature of it. That said he'd been playing really well, and they're expecting him to have a decent part to play in the season as well. So I don't really care that he's being played out of position because he's being played as a holding midfielder, which for me is no more useful than a central defender in terms of getting goals. But it doesn't matter where he's playing. If he's a 4.0 million player, the fact that he's playing is great. So yeah, he's one that I could definitely envision making his way into my team before this game starts. So yeah, overall, I really like it. I like the structure. Good to see a team of three at the back. 3-5-2 is probably my favourite FPL formation, and to have Salah and Sterling there with your captaincy options, I think it's really great.
Yeah, thanks. So I have been on 4-4-2 for so long, but as I said, I just can't look past De Bruyne, and I can't look past him as a placeholder for Son. Yeah. And I don't want to downgrade Sterling, so I don't see how to make this happen otherwise. But it's a problem with Den Donker. I might actually start like Lundstrom instead and hope for some clean sheets. I don't know. It's tough. Hopefully, I hope Nicolas Pepe goes to Arsenal, and hopefully he will have a nice price tag for FPL, because then he's coming into my side. If he's anything less than 8.5, he's going straight in, and all of this doesn't matter anymore. So I think we should do this one more time before the season starts, after all those transfers. And that will conclude this video. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys in a bit.